Hello everyone, we are going to discuss phrasal structure and verb complementation. Before we move into these specific topics, we need to discuss certain linguistic concepts and terminologies that is of significance here. The first one is generative grammar. This is a concept explained by the great linguist Noam Chomsky in his 1957 book Syntactic Structures. This is built on the idea that there is the possibility of generating infinite number of sentences using the finite number of rules put forward by the generative approach. This is similar or comparable to how in mathematics an endless set of results can be generated in algebra by the operation of a set formalized rule. We refer to a text titled Syntactic Structures. Syntactic or syntax is a word that recurs throughout our discussion. In linguistics, syntax is the study of how words and morphemes combine to form longer or larger units such as phrases and sentences. In its most basic sense, syntax refers to the way words and phrases are put together to form sentences in a language. Syntactic means of or according to syntax. So, we were speaking about generative grammar. Two types of rules, namely PS rules or phrase structure rules and transformations form part of the generative grammar. These rules are constitutive rules rather than regulatory rules as they determine the grammatical structure of sentences. As I have already told, before we dive into our thrust areas, we need to get acquainted with certain linguistic concepts. So, the next one is D structure and S structure. D structure, which is the deep or underlying structure, is the abstract level in which all meaning reside. S structure or surface structure is the concrete realization of D structure. The PS rules or the phrase structure rules generate D structure, determining the linear order of words in a symbol, active, positive and declarative sentence, the lexical and phrasal categories to which the word belong and the hierarchical relationships in which the words enter. And at the same time, transformational rules generate varied sentence types of surface structure. These rules rearrange, add and delete elements but does not change the meaning. The next is IC analysis or immediate constituent analysis. It is a system of grammatical analysis that divides sentences into successive layers or constituents until in the final layer each constituent consists of only a word or a meaningful part of a word. So, now we can look at an example. Consider the statement, the old man fell down. The immediate constituents would be the old man and fell down. The old man would be divided into the and old man, which on final level would be the, old and man. And at the same time, fell down would be divided into fell and down. This method of IC analysis is considered as a predecessor to phrase structure rules. Noam Chomsky himself in his work Syntactic Structures argued that though IC analysis is not wrong, it was insufficient as it dealt with only the surface order. Nothing was conveyed about the D structure or the deep structure through this method. So, this reveals PS rules are advanced and immediate constituent analysis. Now, moving on to topics of our major concern, we have phrase structure rules or PS rules. Phrase structure grammar consists of a set of ordered rules known as rewrite rules. A rewrite rule has a single symbol on the left and one or more symbols on the right. More than one symbol on the right constitutes a string. The arrow symbol stands for rewritten as, has its constituents, consist of or is expanded as. The plus sign stands for followed by. A symbol prototype of the above said rule would be A rewritten as B followed by C, and the next example is C expanded as D. The rewrite rule can be represented or depicted in the form of a tree diagram as represented in this figure. In this figure, B and C are called labeled nodes. A is a branching node since it is from this node that further branching occurs. At the same time, C is considered a non-branching node. Here, two metaphors can be used to represent this diagram. In the family tree metaphor, B and C are daughters of A such that A is referred to as the mother of B and C. In the domination metaphor, a distinction is made between immediate domination and domination. A node dominates everything below it. Hence, A dominates B, C and D. Making the distinction between immediate domination and domination, we can say that A immediately dominates B and C but not D. This is because a node immediately dominates those nodes for which there are no intervening nodes. In the case of D, there is an intervening node. PS rules also allow for choices. The optional choices are indicated by parentheses. At times, the plus sign is left out. This indicates that the presence of plus sign is understood. If it is written A rewritten as B within parentheses followed by C, it means A is expanded as optionally B and obligatorily C. It is to be noted that in every rewrite rule, at least one element must be obligatory. After parentheses, we have curly braces. Mutually exclusive choice of elements in a string is indicated by curly braces. Please take a look at this. This rule states that if you choose B, you can't choose C. But you must choose one, either B or C, but not both. Consider another possibility. Please take a look at this rewrite rule. This rule leads to the following possibilities. In every phrase structure rule, there must be an initial symbol, a first left-hand symbol such as A above. Thereafter, every symbol appearing on the left has already been introduced on the right-hand side. The symbols that occur on the right but never on the left are called terminal symbols. They occur at the bottom of the tree diagram. Here, B and D are terminal symbols. If we choose C and D, then C and D become terminal symbols. Recursion is described as the ability to place one component inside another component of the same kind. If a symbol introduces itself, it is known as a recursive symbol as A in the following rule. A expanded as B followed by C followed by A within parentheses. Or if one of the symbols, consider A, once introduced, reintroduces itself, it is also recursive as in the following. The first one is A expanded as B followed by C, and the second one is B followed by A within parenthesis followed by B. Now, a next stage of concern regarding phrase structure grammar is the constituents of sentences according to generative grammar. We already know that in traditional grammar, sentence is composed of words and phrases which are groups of words. In generative grammar, sentences are likewise composed of phrases which act as constituents. Not all sequence of words function as constituents. It is the context which determines whether it has syntactic significance and whether a particular phrase becomes a constituent. We will deal with these concepts once we start discussing different types of phrases. Before we get into the discussion of different types of phrases, we are going to refresh our knowledge of a basic rule or tenet of grammar. Whether it be traditional grammar or the generative grammar that we are dealing now, it is a basic knowledge that a sentence consists of two constituents, namely subject and predicate. Sentence can be represented with S, subject with SU, and predicate with PRED. So what is a predicate? Predicate is the part of a sentence containing a verb and stating something about the subject. So for example, consider the statement, he fell down. Here, he is the subject and fell down is the predicate. Switching this to the ideas of phrase structure grammar, we can formalize this into sentence or S expanded as noun phrase followed by verb phrase, where he is the noun phrase and fell down is the verb phrase. So now we are going to analyze phrases belonging to different phrasal categories. These are noun phrase, adjective phrase, adverb phrase, prepositional phrase and verb phrase. It is also to be mentioned that there are a number of symbols used in PS rules in addition to the ones we have discussed so far. We can read out all the symbols including those we have already discussed. Right arrow symbol is read as, is rewritten as, or has its constituents or consist of, or is expanded as. Plus sign stands for followed by, N stands for noun, NP stands for noun phrase, V stands for verb, VP for verb phrase, A for adjective, AP for adjective phrase,
ADVP for adverb phrase,
PP for prepositional phrase, DET for determiners, DEM for demonstratives like this, these, that, those, etc. In addition to that, we have articles which is represented by ART, and WH stands for WH words like which, what and whose. So, first we have the noun phrase. We will analyze each of these categories through examples. So, considering noun phrase, NP is the symbol used for noun phrase. As it is understood, noun is the obligatory element in noun phrase. There are various structural expansions possible for a noun phrase as is given in this table. So, I have noted some examples of noun phrases in the form of rewrite rules before getting into our major concern in PS rules, which is a tree diagram, so as to make you all get acquainted with the concept. So, now we move to the tree diagram, which is also termed as phrase marker. So, while we move to this diagrammatical representation, we can take various examples to draw tree diagrams. So, take the example, the large dogs. Writing it according to the rewrite rule, it can be written as determiner followed by A followed by N. But for diagrammatic representations, there are certain set standards and a bit more elaboration is needed. We can look at the diagram and make further explanations. The large dogs can be diagrammatically represented in this way. We can see that a new element N bar is introduced in this structure. This functions like an umbrella term and includes all other elements other than the determiner. This inclusive term needs further step-by-step division similar to other branches. This element is introduced so as to give a proper and well-ordered structure to the diagram and to avoid the irregularities in the overall structure of the diagram. So, NP is expanded as determiner DET and N bar. Since article is the determiner here, DET is expanded as ART, N bar is further divided into AP and N. As we have already written, it is evident that it is an adjective, but the structure of the tree diagram or phrase marker demands that the further expansion demands the branch of AP before getting further branched into adjective. So, the next one is adjective phrase. Let us take the example, the very fiercely barking dog. Very fiercely barking is the adjective phrase that qualifies the noun here, which is dog. Take a look at the tree diagram. In the tree diagram, the noun phrase or NP is expanded as DET or determiner and N bar, and determiner is further expanded as ART or article, and here the is the article used, and on the other side we have to further divide N bar, and the N bar is divided into AP or adjective phrase and noun, and adjective phrase AP is further divided into DEG, ADV and A. DEG stands for degree adverbs like more, most, less, least, very, etc. And the ADV stands for adverb, and the adverb here is fiercely, and A stands for adjective, which is barking. And we have already said that N bar is divided into AP and N, and dog is the noun here. So, we have to divide, or we have to expand N with the noun dog. The third one is adverb phrase or ADVP. So, we can take an example very quickly, as in the statement, he walks very quickly. So, let us take a look at this diagram or tree diagram. ADVP is expanded as DEG and ADV. DEG stands for degree adverbs like more, most, very, etc. ADV stands for adverb, which is the primary element in ADVP. The fourth one is prepositional phrase, and it is represented as PP. The most simple example for prepositional phrase would be one including a preposition and a noun phrase. So, we can take the example on the beach. Look at the tree diagram. PP expanded as preposition or P and noun phrase, and the preposition here is on. So, P is expanded as on. NB or noun phrase is further expanded as DET or determiner and N bar, and since the is the article which is the determiner here, we can further divide determiner into article and which further divides into the, and N bar is further divided into N or noun and beach is the noun here. So, the chart is completed. And we have conjunction now. A conjunction is a word that is used to connect words, phrases and clauses. And, or, but, because, etc. are some of the examples of conjunctions. And what is of significance here is that Noam Chomsky has not extended his phrase structure rules to conjunction. So, phrase structure rules does not account for conjunction of elements. So, even though we can draw a tree diagram with the given elements, we cannot use the right arrow sign which is read as rewritten as in PS rules. The diagram given here is an example for the diagrammatic representation of the conjunction. So, we can consider the phrase in and out the window. The last one, which is verb phrase, will be dealt with as a separate category under the heading verb complementation, as it needs much elaboration. We can begin the discussion of our second thrust area, verb complementation, with the discussion of verb phrase. Similar to earlier ones like noun phrase and so on, verb phrase is a syntactic structure consisting of at least one verb and its dependents. So, as we can easily understand, the presence of a verb is the most basic necessity for a verb phrase, and it should have dependents like objects of a sentence or complements, etc. For example, consider the statement, he drove the car, and the verb here is drove, and what immediately follows is the phrase the car, which acts as the complement or dependent here. So, the verb phrase here is drove the car. Since this is a scientific study, we need to get acquainted with certain terminologies or symbols concerning the verb phrase. VGP or verb group is one such term. VGP stands for verb in its most basic form. It consists of a lexical verb with or without a particle. It just means that it is the most basic form which cannot be further divided. So, moving to our main title, verb complementation. This title means to discuss the various subcategories possible for verbs based on the complements of a verb, that is based on what follows a verb. So, this means that based on what follows a verb, categorization of verbs are possible, and it is these categories that is under the title verb complementation. So, we can start with an example we have already discussed. Consider the same statement, he drove the car. The verb here is drove, and what immediately follows is the phrase the car. So, it is the complement here. So, since we have gone through different kinds of phrases, we can understand that the car is a noun phrase. So, the structure of this would be generalized as a blank space followed by NP, where the blank space stands for the space where verb is to be put. Consider a second example, she seems tired, and in this case the general structure would be a blank space followed by AP or adjective phrase, because seems is the verb here and tired is the adjective phrase here. And considering a third example, she argued with him, the general structure would be a blank space followed by PP, because with him is a prepositional phrase and the blank space is to be filled with the verb argued. So, from these three examples, we can draw a general structure for verb phrase or the concept of verb complement as is given here. So, even though there are many complements in many different sequences possible for a verb phrase or a verb. These three, namely noun phrase, adjective phrase and prepositional phrase, are obligatory. So, the basic structure of categorization or subcategorization can be formulated as a blank space followed by NP and another blank space followed by AP and a blank space followed by PP. This general structure deduced from the above three examples is of great significance. On the basis of the type of complement a verb takes, a number of subcategories of verbs can be identified. These are transitive, intransitive, ditransitive, copulative, complex transitive, prepositional and diprepositional verbs. So, first we can consider transitive verbs. These are verbs that express action that terminates in or is received by an object. The object can be a noun, pronoun or a noun clause or a phrase. So, consider the example, I threw a ball. Here, the ball is the object or the direct object, which is a noun phrase. Generalizing the objects possible in transitive or monotransitive verbs, the subcategorization frame would be a blank space followed by NP. The second one is intransitive verb. These are verbs that express action that do not take an object. With an intransitive verb, no complement is required or allowed. For example, consider the statement, she cried. Here, we do not have an object or a direct object. The subcategorization frame would be a blank space followed by hash symbol. The third one is ditransitive verb. Ditransitive verbs take both a direct object and an indirect object. For example, consider the statement, he gave her the letter. The letter is the direct object here, that is, it is the letter that he gave, and her is the indirect object here because she is the person to whom he gave the letter to. If we consider NP1 as the indirect object here and NP2 as the direct object here, we know that indirect object is her and direct object is the letter, then the subcategorization frame would be a blank space followed by NP1 followed by NP2. The fourth one is copulative verb. Copulative verb or copula connects the subject to the complement. They are sometimes called linking verbs. Examples are become, seem, feel, be, etc. with the following subcategorization frame. A blank space followed by NP, and an example is Priya is a doctor, and the other one is a blank space followed by AP or adjective phrase, and the example is Priya seems tired, and the third one is a blank space followed by PP, and she is in a good mood is an example for this categorization frame. The complement in each of these three sentences acts as subject complement. That is, consider the first statement, Priya is a doctor. Here is the verb and a doctor is the complement. So, here a doctor complements the subject Priya. In the second and third statements as well, we can see the same situation, because when we say Priya seems tired, tired is something that complements Priya. So, the fifth one is complex transitive verb. This is a combination of transitive and copulative structures. The first element of noun phrase is a direct object and the second element is an object complement. For example, consider the statement, we consider him a brave man. Consider is the verb here, him is the direct object because we consider him. So, it is the direct object, and a brave man is the object complement, because here a brave man is a word that is used to describe the object here. Here we is the subject. So, we can see that a brave man is not something that describes the subject, rather it describes the object. So, it is called the object complement. The subcategorization frame would be a blank space followed by noun phrase followed by a noun phrase, And the other two possibilities would be a blank space followed by a noun phrase followed by an adjective phrase, and a blank space followed by a noun phrase and a prepositional phrase. And these three structures can be generalized in a common or a general subcategorization frame as is given here. The sixth one is prepositional verb. A prepositional phrase is a complement in these type of verbs. This prepositional complement is abbreviated as PREP, and the subcategorization frame is a blank space followed by PP. For example, consider the statement, he agreed to the terms, where to the terms is the prepositional phrase. To avoid confusion with the object of preposition, we call this a prepositional complement or PC. And the next one is diprepositional, which is abbreviated as DIPREP. As the name suggests, this would have two prepositional phrases. For example, consider the verbs confer, talk, consult with the following subcategorization frame, a blank space followed by PP followed by PP. Consider statement, she argued with him about money. With him and about money are two prepositional phrases here. So, we have the subcategorization frame, a blank space followed by PP, which is again followed by PP. So, now we have reached the concluding part of the discussion of verb complementation, and we have latent objects for our discussion. One of the difficulties for verb subcategorization in English is that it is sometimes possible to omit the direct object when it is understood from the context. For example, consider the statement, he ate. In some context, it is understood as he ate dinner. So, we can omit the word dinner from it or the direct object from it. In such cases, the object can be understood as being latent. And if the object is irrelevant, then the verb is likewise intransitive, that is, does not have an object, since the object is not necessary at all. For example, he smokes, and it is not important what he smokes, because you are simply saying that he is a smoker. And another instance is that if the object is completely predictable, however, the object is latent, because in those cases object is understood from the context. For example, we held an election for the president, we elected Caroline. So, we do not have to say we elected Caroline as the president, because we know that the election was being held for electing a president. So, as president can be omitted here. With this, we have reached the end of our discussion on phrasal structure and verb complementation. Thank you all for listening.